Beamy River, 25. Got a decent job in tech, a small apartment, and a recurring sense of being an idiot. This story is about Kate and how I stopped being an idiot. We'd been friends for years, since college. I always had a massive, painfully obvious crush on her. She was smart, funny, passionate about her beliefs. She was also a self-proclaimed feminist, which was cool with me. The problem wasn't her beliefs. It was how she used them as a shield for her behavior, and how I let her. It started small, as it always does. It's a Tuesday night, maybe 1 a.m. I'm just about to fall asleep after a long day. My phone lights up the dark room. It's Kate. My heart does that stupid little jump it always does. Maybe she finally realized something. Maybe she had a moment of clarity. I answer, trying to sound awake. Instantly, I hear hysterical crying, the kind that makes you think something truly terrible has happened. My own tiredness vanishes, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. I'm asking what's wrong, if she's okay, if someone got hurt. She finally manages to choke out the story between sobs. A guy she met on Hinge, let's call him Brad, had stopped replying to her messages. That was it. That was the emergency. Brad, who she'd been texting for 3 days and had never met in person, had committed the ultimate crime of leaving her on red. I sit there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to a 45-minute monologue. It wasn't just about Brad anymore. It was about the entire male gender. She went on about toxic masculinity and men's inability to communicate their feelings. How men are emotionally stunted and only want one thing. How this guy was a perfect example of the fragile male ego, unable to handle a strong, independent woman. All I could do was listen. I did the classic nice guy routine. You're right. He's an idiot. You're way too good for him. He's probably intimidated by you. Every word felt like a little piece of my soul was shriveling up. I was validating her narrative, a narrative that painted all men, including me by extension, as flawed creatures. Yet, I did it, because I hoped that by being her emotional support, she'd eventually see me as more. After nearly an hour, her crying subsides. She lets out a deep sigh, the drama finally purged from her system. Her voice is suddenly light and cheerful. She tells me she feels so much better now that she's talked it out. She says I'm the best friend a girl could ask for, a truly good man, unlike all the others. A little pat on the head for the good boy. Then she says she's sleepy and is going to bed. Click. She hangs up. I'm left in my silent, dark room, more awake than I've ever been, feeling like a complete tool. I had just served my purpose as her 24/7 emotional janitor. A few weeks later, she moves into a new apartment. She calls me in a panic. The moving company she hired was a no-show. She has a mountain of boxes and furniture and no way to move them. Guess who cancels his entire Saturday to rent a U-Haul? I spend the next 8 hours hauling her life up and down 3 flights of stairs. Her couch, her bed frame, boxes of books that weighed more than I did, all while she directs traffic, pointing where things should go. She's talking the whole time about how empowering it is to have her own space, how she's creating a sanctuary free from patriarchal influence. I'm sweating through my shirt, my back is screaming, and I'm listening to a lecture on the patriarchy while single-handedly moving her massive oak dresser. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. At the end of the day, I'm physically wrecked. We're sitting on the floor of her new living room, surrounded by boxes. She pulls 2 lukewarm beers from a mini-fridge, hands one to me and says, "I literally could not have done this without you, River. You're a lifesaver." I manage a weak smile, thinking maybe this is it. Maybe this grand gesture of physical labor will finally flip the switch. She takes a picture of her new living room, carefully framing it so I'm not in the shot. Later that night, I see her post on Instagram. It's the photo of the living room. The caption reads, "Finally in my new place. So much hard work, but it's so worth it to build a space that's all my own. Hashtag independent woman. Hashtag girl boss. Hashtag DIY." There was no mention of me. No credit for the 8 hours of back-breaking labor. I was just the invisible force that made her independent lifestyle possible. My contribution was erased so she could maintain her narrative of self-sufficiency. The feeling wasn't anger, not yet. It was a hollow, sinking feeling in my stomach. The kind of feeling you get when you realize you've been played for a fool. But the hope, that stupid, stubborn hope, was still there. It told me to be patient, to keep being the good guy. A month or so goes by. Things continue in the same pattern. Late-night calls about her dating woes, me being her +1 to events when she couldn't find a proper date, me fixing her laptop or helping her with some technical issue. I was her personal handyman, IT department, and therapist, all rolled into one. And my only payment was the occasional "you're the best" river. The real breaking point, the one that finally shattered the delusion, happened at a bar. She invited me out with a group of her friends. I was the only guy there. I felt like I was on display. Her friends were nice enough, but they looked at me with a sort of polite curiosity, like I was Kate's interesting pet. Kate was in her element, talking loudly, making everyone laugh. I'm sitting there, nursing a beer, feeling more like a background character than ever. After a couple of drinks, a little bit of liquid courage kicks in. I decide this is my chance. I have to say something, anything. I wait for a lull in the conversation. I turn to her and say something simple, like, "You look really nice tonight, Kate." It was quiet, meant just for her. But she reacts as if I had just proposed marriage in the middle of a stadium. She lets out a huge theatrical laugh that makes everyone at the table turn to look at us. She throws her arm around my shoulders, pulling me into a rough side hug. "Aw, River," she says to the whole table. "Isn't he the sweetest? It's so amazing to have a guy friend you can be totally real with, you know? No drama, no weird romantic tension, just pure friendship." She was saying it to her friends, but the message was aimed directly at me. It was a public declaration of my status. I was safe, I was harmless, I was the eunuch in the Queen's court. I could feel my face burning. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Her friends all smiled, these pitying little smiles. They knew exactly what was happening. I was being put in my place. For the rest of the night, I just sat there, completely silent. I felt like an idiot, a complete and utter fool. I had invested so much time and emotional energy into this person, only to be publicly castrated as a reward. The ride home was quiet. I didn't have anything to say. She, on the other hand, was buzzing from her night out. She didn't even notice my silence, or if she did, she didn't care. As I dropped her off, she gave me a quick, sisterly pat on the arm. "Thanks for coming out tonight, buddy. It was fun." Buddy. That word echoed in my head all the way home. The final straw came a few weeks after the bar incident. I was still licking my wounds, trying to create some distance. Then she calls me. This time, her voice is laced with manufactured urgency. She's broken up with her flavor-of-the-month boyfriend. The problem is, she'd left a bunch of her stuff at his apartment, including an expensive couch she'd bought with him. She needed my help to go get it. Now. She knew I wouldn't say no. Helping a friend in distress is part of the nice guy code, so I agree. We drive to her ex's place in my car. The entire ride, she's telling me what a monster he was, how he was emotionally manipulative and displayed all the classic signs of toxic masculinity. I just nod and drive. We get to his apartment, and it's incredibly awkward. He's there, looking just as miserable as I feel. Kate directs the whole operation, like a general. Her ex and I are the grunts tasked with maneuvering this ridiculously heavy and awkward L-shaped couch out of his apartment. We're struggling to get it through the narrow doorway. My knuckles are scraping against the frame. My muscles are screaming. All the while, Kate is standing back, offering unhelpful advice. Lift with your legs. Be careful not to scratch the wall. Pivot it. Pivot. I have a moment of clarity while my spine is compressing under the weight of this monument to her bad decisions. I'm literally carrying her baggage. We finally get the couch into the moving truck I had to rent for this excursion. The ex-boyfriend retreats back into his apartment without another word. I'm leaning against the truck, trying to catch my breath. Kate comes over, beaming. We did it. Thank you so much, River. She gives me a quick hug. Then she looks at her phone. Oh, shoot. Look at the time, she says, her voice suddenly rushed. I have to go. I have a date in an hour with this new guy I met. He seems really promising. She just says it, just like that. After I spent my afternoon hauling a couch out of her ex-boyfriend's apartment, she tells me she's immediately running off to meet a new guy. She didn't even offer to help me return the truck. She just smiled, told me to leave the couch on the curb outside her building, and called an Uber. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching her ride away. That was it. The spell was broken. The hope that had kept me going for years finally died. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was a quiet, cold realization. She didn't see me as a person. I was a tool, a convenience. A human Swiss Army knife she could pull out whenever she needed something. I was her safety net, the ever-reliable background character who enabled her main character lifestyle. And I had let it happen. That night, I went out for a beer with my one good friend, a guy I've known since childhood. He's the kind of brutally honest friend everyone needs. I told him everything. The late-night calls, the moving, the bar, the couch. I laid it all out, and for the first time, I heard how pathetic it sounded when I said it out loud. He just listened, nodding slowly, not interrupting. When I was finished, he took a long sip of his beer. He looked me straight in the eye. You know you're just her emotional butler, right? The words hit me harder than any insult. She doesn't respect you, man. Not because you're not a good guy, but because you don't respect yourself. He continued. You're orbiting her like she's the sun, hoping to catch some of her warmth, but all you're getting is burned. She's never going to wake up one day and realize she's in love with you. That only happens in movies. In the real world, women like her don't date their handymen. They date the guys who challenge them, the guys who have their own lives. You don't have a life, River. You're just a recurring character in hers. Every word was a gut punch of truth. He told me I needed to stop, to go completely cold turkey. No more answering her calls, no more doing her favors, no more being her shoulder to cry on. You need to build a life so good that you don't have time for her nonsense, he said. Get a hobby, hit the gym, focus on your work, become the main character of your own story. We sat there for a while longer, but that was the core of it. It was the harshest, but most necessary conversation of my life. I went home that night feeling strangely calm. The obsession, the hope, the frustration, it was all gone, replaced by a quiet, firm resolve. He was right. It was time to stop being a butler. The first test came sooner than I expected. A few days later, my phone buzzes at 11 p.m. It's a text from Kate. Hey, you up? The old me would have replied instantly. Of course. What's wrong? The new me just looked at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I put the phone down and went back to the book I was reading. An hour later, another buzz. Everything okay? You're usually so quick to reply. A hint of annoyance in her tone. I ignored that one, too. The next morning, I woke up to a series of missed calls and frantic texts. It turned out her Wi-Fi was down, and she needed me to come over and fix it. I read the messages and felt absolutely nothing. I simply replied, "Sorry, can't, busy." Her response came back instantly. "Busy with what? It's an emergency. I have to work from home." The entitlement was breathtaking. My time was only valuable when it was being spent on her. I thought for a moment. "Call your internet provider," I texted back. "That's what they're for." The three little dots indicating she was typing appeared and disappeared for a full 5 minutes. She was clearly struggling to process this new reality. Finally, she replied with a single, cold, "Fine." It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. I had, for the first time, prioritized my own peace over her convenience. A week later, I got the big one. A text that started with, "You are not going to believe what happened." This was her classic opening for a long, dramatic story about some guy. I knew it would be followed by a, "Can you talk?" I looked at the text. I thought about the hour of my life I would lose listening to it. I thought about the emotional energy it would drain from me. Then I looked at my gym bag, packed and sitting by the door. I typed back, "Hope you're okay, but I'm on my way to the gym. Can't talk." Her reply was dripping with passive aggression. "Oh, okay. Have a good workout, I guess." I didn't guess. I knew I would, and I did. That day at the gym, something shifted. I wasn't just going through the motions. I was working out for me, to be stronger, to feel better, to burn off years of frustration. I started going consistently, 3 days a week, then 4. I started eating better. I started focusing more at work. I picked up an old hobby I'd abandoned. I bought a new bass guitar and started learning songs again. My life, which had been a series of waiting periods between Kate-related events, was suddenly becoming my own. I was filling it with things that made me happy, that built me up instead of draining me. Kate's messages became less frequent. They shifted from demanding to confused, and then to a sort of wounded silence. She didn't know how to deal with this version of me who wasn't at her beck and call. I felt a strange sense of freedom. It wasn't about hurting her or getting revenge. It was about reclaiming my own life. About 2 months into this new routine, something unexpected happened. I was at the gym, struggling with a new personal record on the bench press. I was about to give up on the last rep when I heard a voice. "Need a spot?" I looked over and saw a girl standing there. Her name was Jada. I'd seen her around the gym before. She was always focused, working hard, not there to mess around. I nodded, and she helped me finish the set. Afterward, we started talking. Not about dating drama or emotional baggage. We talked about workout routines, about music, about funny movies. The conversation was easy, effortless. There were no mind games, no hidden meanings. She laughed at my dumb jokes. At the end of our workout, as we were leaving, I took a chance. I asked if she'd like to get coffee sometime. I was fully prepared for rejection. Years of conditioning had taught me to expect it. But she just smiled, a genuine warm smile. "I'd like that a lot," she said. And just like that, a new chapter started. Be me again. River, no longer a professional doormat. Our first date, Jada and I, was just coffee. It was supposed to be a quick, low-pressure thing. We ended up talking for 3 hours. It was the strangest thing. The conversation was a two-way street. She asked me questions about my job, my hobbies, my family. And she actually listened to the answers. She wasn't just waiting for her turn to talk. I realized that in all my years of friendship with Kate, I could count on one hand the number of times she'd asked me a personal question that wasn't a setup for her own story. With Jada, it was a genuine exchange. She told me about her goals, her passion for fitness, the terrible jokes her dad makes. I found myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in a long time. There was no underlying tension, no feeling like I was being interviewed or tested. It was just easy. We started seeing each other regularly after that. We'd go to the gym together, cook dinner at her place, explore different parts of the city. The difference in how she treated me versus how Kate had was like night and day. I remember one weekend, I helped her assemble a complicated new desk for her home office. It was a beast of a thing, way worse than Kate's bookshelf. I spent most of a Saturday getting it done. When I finished, I was preparing myself for the familiar lukewarm thanks and a pat on the back. Instead, Jada had ordered our favorite takeout. She handed me a cold drink and looked at the desk, then at me. She told me she was incredibly grateful, not just for the help, but for me giving up my Saturday for her. She made it clear that she valued my time. The next day, she texted me a picture of her new setup with a caption about how she had the best and most helpful boyfriend in the world. It was such a small thing, but it felt huge. It was recognition. It was respect. I was a partner, not an unpaid intern. Our relationship wasn't built on a foundation of what I could do for her. It was built on mutual appreciation. She encouraged my hobbies. She'd listen quietly while I practiced bass, and she'd tell me when a riff sounded cool. She never once called me in the middle of the night crying about some guy who'd ghosted her. Her emotional life was her own to manage, and when she did share things with me, it was as an equal, not as a patient talking to her therapist. I was happier than I'd been in years. I felt calm, centered, and confident. A month or two into our relationship, we went on a weekend trip to a small town a few hours away. We took a picture together, standing by a scenic lookout. We both looked genuinely happy. I had my arm around her, and she was leaning into me. It felt right. When we got back, I posted the picture online. It was the first time I'd ever posted a photo of a girlfriend. My caption was simple: a great weekend. I didn't think much of it, but I had just lit a fuse. Less than an hour after I posted the photo, my phone buzzed. It was Kate. The message was a single sentence. Who is she? There was no hi, no how are you, just the blunt, accusatory question. I wasn't going to play games. That's Jada. She's my girlfriend. The three little dots appeared instantly. She was typing for a long time. I could almost feel the gears turning in her head, the narrative shifting. The final message she sent was a masterpiece of fake enthusiasm. OMG, River. I am so unbelievably happy for you. She's beautiful. We have to all hang out together soon. Drinks on me. XOXO. The sudden friendliness was jarring. She hadn't reached out to me in weeks. Now, suddenly, she wanted to be best friends with my new girlfriend. I knew exactly what it was. It was an attempt to get back inside the perimeter, to assess the new situation and figure out her angle. I gave a non-committal, maybe someday, and left it at that. The next phase of her campaign began a few days later. I got a frantic text in the middle of a workday. Emergency. My kitchen sink just exploded. There's water everywhere. I don't know what to do. The old me would have dropped everything, left work, and rushed over to be her hero. The new me saw it for what it was. A test. A manufactured crisis, to see if her utility was still on call. I typed back calmly. That sounds serious. You should call a plumber, or your building superintendent. Her reply was laced with indignation. A plumber will take hours to get here. I thought you could just come take a look. You're always so good at this stuff. The flattery was a little hook, trying to pull me back in. I didn't bite. I'm at work, Kate. And besides, I have plans with Jada tonight. I can't. I had weaponized my new life against her old demands. The silence on her end was deafening. I didn't hear from her for the rest of the day. I knew I had passed the test for myself and failed it for her. The passive aggression started to leak through more and more. She'd send me old photos of us from college with captions like, "Remember how much fun we used to have? Miss my best friend?" It was an attempt to make me feel guilty, to frame my new relationship as a betrayal of our special friendship. I'd just liked the message and move on. No engagement, gray rock. One evening, while I was at Jada's place, my phone rang. It was Kate. Jada saw the name on the screen. She knew the broad strokes of the story. I'd been open with her. She just gave me a supportive look. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. Her understanding was a stark contrast to Kate's possessiveness. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was a low, sad voice, completely different from her usual energetic tone. She said she was feeling really down. She said she was going through a tough time, and that I was the only one who ever really understood her. She missed our talks. She missed her friend. It was a full-court press on my guilt complex. A year ago, it would have worked. I would have felt terrible. I would have called her back instantly. But now, I just saw the pattern. My attention was a resource. When I gave it freely, she took it for granted. Now that it was gone, she was having a withdrawal. Her problems were only emergencies when I was available to solve them. I deleted the voicemail without calling back. The final escalation happened about a month after that. She sent me a long, multi-paragraph text. She demanded we meet in person. She said our friendship was too important to let it just fade away like this. She said she was worried about me, that I seemed distant and different. She framed it as her being a concerned friend, but the subtext was clear. I needed to come and explain myself. I was tired of it, tired of the constant low-level drama. Jada and I talked about it. She was amazing. She said, "It sounds like you need to set a firm boundary for your own peace of mind. Whatever you decide to do, I support you." Her trust in me to handle my own business was another breath of fresh air. I decided to agree to meet her. Not for her, but for me. I needed to close this chapter for good. No ambiguity. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop. I got there a few minutes early. I felt strangely calm. The old anxiety I used to feel around her was gone. She walked in, and I saw she had put in an effort. She was dressed up, more so than usual for a casual coffee. She sat down and gave me a sad, wounded smile. The performance had already begun. She started by asking how I was, but didn't wait for an answer. She launched into a monologue about how much she'd been thinking about us, about our friendship. She talked about all the good times we'd had, painting a picture of a perfect, idyllic friendship. A version of our friendship that I didn't recognize. One where the scales weren't permanently tilted in her favor. Then came the main event. She looked at me, her eyes getting a little misty. "I think I owe you an apology," she said, her voice soft and full of fake emotion. I think I was scared. I just stayed silent, waiting. I relied on you so much, and I think I took you for granted," she continued. "But it was because you were the one safe person in my life, the one man I could trust." She was framing her exploitation as a compliment. And maybe I was scared of something more. Here it was, the ace up her sleeve. Maybe I was scared of how much I cared about you, and I was afraid of ruining the friendship if I ever admitted it. She was rewriting history. She was trying to plant the idea in my head that she had harbored secret feelings for me all along, that I had just given up too soon, that if I had just waited a little longer, been a little more patient, I would have gotten my prize. She was trying to invalidate my new relationship, to make it seem like I'd settled for second best, when the real thing had been right there all along. A year ago, hearing those words would have sent my world spinning. It was everything I had ever wanted to hear from her. But now, sitting there across from her, I felt nothing but a profound sense of pity. It was all just a tactic, a desperate last-ditch effort to pull me back into her orbit. She didn't want me. She wanted my devotion. She wanted the guy who would drop everything to fix her sink, not the man sitting in front of her who was happy without her. I let her finish. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. She was looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to crack, to show some sign of confusion or regret. I took a calm sip of my coffee. Then I looked her straight in the eye. I didn't raise my voice. I wasn't angry. I was just done. "Kate," I started, and my voice was steady. "I need you to be honest with yourself for a moment." Her face flickered with surprise. This was not the reaction she had anticipated. "You don't miss me," I said, plainly. "You miss the convenience of me. You miss having someone available 24/7 to listen to your problems, to do you favors, and to make you feel like the center of the universe." "That's not true," she started to interrupt, but I kept going. "You say you were scared of your feelings, but your actions never showed that. Your actions showed that you saw me as a friend, and a very useful one at that. You put me in the friend zone publicly, and you were perfectly happy to keep me there as long as I was useful to you. The only reason we are having this conversation right now is because I am no longer available. You didn't suddenly develop feelings for me. You just realized your safety net was gone." Every word I said seemed to make her shrink a little in her chair. The righteous indignation was gone, replaced by a stunned silence. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't accused. I had just laid out the simple, unvarnished truth. "I'm happy now, Kate," I continued, my voice a little softer. "Jada is my partner. She's my girlfriend, and she's my best friend. What we have is real, because it's based on mutual respect. She doesn't see me as a tool. She sees me as a person. I was a good friend to you. I did everything I could to be there for you, but it was never going to be enough, because you weren't looking for a friend. You were looking for a fan." I put some money down on the table to cover both our coffees. I stood up. "I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for someday," I said, "but my role in your life is over." She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. She had no script for this. The manipulator was out of moves. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. I didn't look back. I didn't feel angry or triumphant. I just felt light, like I had finally put down a heavy weight I had been carrying for years. The texts and calls stopped after that, completely. My life became quiet, peaceful. My time is my own. My energy is my own. I spend it on my work, on my hobbies, on my health, and on a relationship with a woman who builds me up instead of draining me dry. Sometimes I wonder what Kate is doing. I assume she's found some other guy to be her emotional butler and handyman. Or maybe, just maybe, she finally had to learn how to assemble her own furniture. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I'm not the nice guy in her friend zone. I'm the main character in my own story now, and it's a much better story.